Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
Gentleman, yes, back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized.
So I've got 4 documents I'd like to introduce into the record. The first one is Jeffrey Epstein's 6 story played out for years in plain sight. And Acosta is quoted in here saying, I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. The second document is entitled, What Epstein's Bodyguard Warned About His CIA Connections. The third document is from Fox Digital. It's titled, Epstein's Private Calendar Reveals Planned Meetings with Obama Admin Official CIA Chief. And the last document is Wall Street Journal article that highlights Ehud Barak's 36 meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the former prime minister of Israel and head of military intelligence for Israel. It may have held that title when he met Epstein, and then, yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one UC request. This is Judge Engelmeyer's decision from August in U.S. versus Epstein, stating the government's 100,000 pages of Epstein files dwarfs the 70-odd pages of Epstein grand jury materials.
Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to the Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to the Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of 2 different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in live time.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said We are not in the practice at the Department of Justice and FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous
Gentleman
consent
yields back.
request.
Unanimous consent request from the gentleman from New York.
I ask unanimous consent to introduce an unsigned memorandum from July 7th, 2025 that says we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties with the insignia of the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Without objection.
During the House hearing, Congressman Thomas Massie directly challenged FBI Director Kash Patel over the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, focusing on whether Epstein trafficked underage girls to other powerful and well-connected men. Massie referenced Patel's earlier Senate testimony, where Patel had reportedly said there was no credible information showing that Epstein trafficked victims to anyone besides himself. Massie strongly disagreed with that statement and argued that FBI files from the 2019 Southern District of New York investigation, especially FD 302 reports, which are official FBI interview summaries, contain detailed statements from victims naming multiple men Epstein allegedly trafficked them to. He specifically mentioned that these files reportedly include at least 20 individuals, including figures such as former Barclays CEO Jess Staley, along with a royal prince, a Hollywood producer, a prominent music industry figure, a high-profile government official, a former politician, a major, banker, a rock star, a luxury car company owner in Italy, and several billionaires, including one from Canada. Massie's main point was that the FBI already knows these names because victims provided them directly during official investigations, and he questioned why no major new prosecutions had followed. Patel responded by saying that multiple U.S. attorneys' offices across 3 different presidential administrations had already reviewed those same materials and did not find enough credible evidence to justify new indictments against additional people. He emphasized that the Department of Justice and the FBI do not release victims' names publicly and also do not expose allegations that they believe are unverified or legally insufficient. His argument was not that the files do not exist, but that prosecutors had already examined them and determined the evidence did not meet the legal standard needed for criminal charges. When Massie pressed him by asking whether he had personally reviewed the specific FD 302 reports where victims named these individuals, Patel admitted that he personally had not reviewed every one of those documents, but said FBI investigators had. Massie then accused him of speaking too confidently in public about there being no names when such records allegedly exist inside the FBI's own files. The hearing then shifted to another controversial topic: possible intelligence connections involving Jeffrey Epstein. Massie introduced several documents into the congressional record, including reports claiming that former federal prosecutor Alexander Acosta once said he had been told Epstein belonged to intelligence and was instructed to leave the matter alone. He also referenced articles discussing possible CIA links, reports about Epstein's private calendar involving meetings with intelligence-connected figures, and articles about former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak's repeated meetings with Epstein. Massie asked Patel whether he had reviewed any CIA files related to Epstein and whether he would be willing to examine them if they existed. Patel answered carefully, saying he could only speak for the FBI, not the CIA, and stated that if such a file existed and had not already been shared with the FBI, they would review any new credible investigative lead. However, he stopped short of confirming that any CIA file actually exists, avoiding direct confirmation of intelligence involvement. Massie also criticized the Justice Department over what he described as a rushed public release of Epstein-related binders to social media influencers rather than directly prioritizing victims or congressional oversight. He claimed that the timing of that release suspiciously matched the day he introduced a discharge petition demanding greater transparency on Epstein files, and he argued that the rush caused victims' names to be released without proper redactions, upsetting survivors who felt their privacy had been ignored. He asked Patel whether he had been instructed to coordinate that release for political reasons. Patel replied that he was present during the Attorney General's White House event involving those documents, but said he was unaware of any political motivation behind the timing. Near the end of the exchange, another lawmaker attempted to introduce into the record an unsigned July 2025 DOJ/FBI memorandum, stating that investigators did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. This memo supported Patel's position by suggesting that despite public speculation, investigators had not found enough evidence to pursue new criminal cases against additional people tied to Epstein. However, an objection was raised, reflecting the deep disagreement over whether the government had fully pursued the truth or whether influential people had been quietly protected. At the heart of the confrontation was one major question: did Epstein act largely alone, or were other powerful people shielded from accountability? Massie argued that victims named many influential individuals, and that the FBI's refusal to reveal more suggests a cover-up or institutional protection for elites. Patel maintained that the issue was not secrecy for protection, but the legal requirement for credible, prosecutable evidence. This clash between public suspicion and the standards of criminal prosecution is what made the hearing so intense and politically explosive.